Are you an author who just released your book and you are visiting KDP every 5 minutes trying to figure out how many people have bought your book and getting disappointed more and more by the minute because people are not buying it? It's just sitting there stagnant and you're thinking, what did I do wrong? Or are you sending it out on submission to agents and editors and all you're getting is rejections or worse, form letters where they don't even tell you what's wrong with the book? Get it. I totally get it. I wrote 10 books in 8 years that were rejected by a ton of publishers, editors, and agents. Tons of them. And I didn't really know what I was doing wrong until I learned these things that are super critical to creating a book that people love. Once I did that, my career took off. I had the New York Times list. I've sold 8 million copies. My career has gone really, really well since I figured that out. It doesn't mean, however, that everything I write is something that sells. Sometimes I have to go back to the drawing board because I didn't hit all of these 6 things right on the head. So it happens to everybody. Nobody writes a perfect book every single time. Many years ago, before I sold my first book, I was at a writing conference and I remember going to this session with an agent who said, I know within the first 3 sentences if I want to read that book. And I was like, oh my God, what are my first 3 sentences? But it's true. You do know within the first 3 sentences, and that is the first tip. You need an opening that grabs the reader right away. When people look at your book in a bookstore or on Amazon, they're looking at the cover, the back cover copy, and they're flipping through the first couple of pages. A lot of times they're getting the sample, right? The free look inside. They're going to look at those first few pages and they're going to make the decision whether to buy or not. Now, Frida McFadden's The Inmate has a fabulous cover. It screams that this is going to be some kind of a suspense with a little bit of fear or intense ride in it. It totally grabs me. It's the first line, however, that really does its job. As the prison doors slam shut behind me, I question every decision I've ever made in my life. That is a fantastic opening line. And the next 2, if we're talking about just the first 3, are just as good. This is not where I want to be right now at all. And I'm intrigued and I'm ready to start reading it right away and go right to the end. And this was a book that I read very quickly because I was hooked from the beginning. Frida did a couple of other things that I'm going to talk about later in this video that were really crucial to making that a book that I never put down. I literally read it straight through. Secluded Cabin Sleep 6. Lisa Unger is a master at grabbing me in the beginning. In fact, I just read a different Lisa Unger book and I was going to analyze it for the channel. I got to chapter 7 and I was like, oh, I forgot to analyze any of it. I'm so hooked on this story. In Secluded Cabin, the first 3 lines are really great. The carcass is splayed in the middle of the table, carved, flesh torn away, eaten, ribs exposed. The turkey, brown and glistening when it was removed from the oven, is now just a pile of bones. You read that first line, you're like, the carcass is splayed in the middle of the table. Wow, what is going on? Then you figure out that it's the turkey and it's a Christmas dinner, no big deal. But Lisa set the tone with the word the carcass. It's not just showing the happy family sitting around the table. There's something darker at play here. And that was brilliant with her opening. If you want a way to create really compelling characters, I have a free download that is linked right below in the description, so be sure to grab that. Secondly, you need a hook at the end of the first chapter. If you think about it, the look inside usually only gives you the first chapter, maybe 2, depending on how short the chapters are. When I first started writing, it was really important to have a hook at the end of chapter 3. But I first started writing back before TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook existed. And so there wasn't a ton of competition for our attention during the day. There were no streaming services. None of that existed. So you could get away with writing 3 chapters before you really grab the reader. Nowadays, you don't have that luxury. You've got things vying for your reader's attention all the time. So you need to grab their attention over and over again. And in The Inmate, she does a fantastic job of that. At the end of chapter 1, she writes, I can't reveal to her that the man who was my very first boyfriend is an inmate at Raker Maximum Security Penitentiary, currently serving life without the possibility of parole. And I'm the one who put him here. That is a fantastic hook that kept me reading long into the night. At the end of the first chapter of Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, we get a little bit of a picture of who the character is and a little bit of a setup for what's to come. In her family, Hannah is always the good girl, the responsible one, the fixer, the mediator. Sometimes, though, it feels so nice to be bad. And so we know there is something else coming here that we have not seen up until then. That's the job of that hook at the end of chapter 1, is to keep you going until the very end of the book. You want the people that see that hook at the end of chapter 1 to immediately click buy. They've read the sample, now they want to buy. And so those pieces are super important, but they're not the entire story behind why somebody is buying or not buying your book. The third thing you need to do is you need to surprise the reader when they're not expecting it. That means throwing hooks where they don't think there's going to be one. In Lisa Unger's book, it's Christmas, and all of a sudden under the tree there appears all these DNA tests to the family members from Santa. And at first people are like, hey, who did this? But that's a cool hook, right? You're like, wait, we've all seen how this works out. Like, a DNA test is going to end badly. And somebody even says, this is a little strange, this is a little creepy. And it starts to set up the entire plot of the novel. In Joe Hill's Heart-Shaped Box, in the first chapter, a couple pages before the end of the chapter, the two characters in that scene are looking at listings on eBay, places like that, because he collects memorabilia from dead people, like dead famous people. And all of a sudden, they come across this listing that says, I will sell my stepfather's ghost to the highest bidder. Of course, a soul cannot really be sold, but I believe he will come to your home and abide with you if you put out your welcome mat. So we know as the reader that right there in the middle of the chapter, this is setting up for something that is going to be kind of creepy. I really think that Heart-Shaped Box is one of the best horror novels I've ever read. This is Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son, in case you didn't know that. But it's a really, really good book that scared the pants off of me. I really loved it. And this old man, this stepfather's ghost, becomes a huge part of the plot. The little twist right in the middle of the chapter hooked me and kept me going for many, many more pages. And don't forget that free download I have about creating compelling characters, because that will help you get off on the right foot with your reader. The fourth thing is something you may not have thought about before. When I was at Sleuth Fest, Kate White was interviewing Lisa Unger, and one of the things that she said about Lisa was that there are lots of highlighted parts in Lisa Unger's books, meaning that when you go on Amazon and you look at the Kindle edition of the book, you can see what other readers have highlighted. And the parts that get highlighted are vital, because they're the parts that the reader said, this was so good, I want to remember this. These are the things that connect with the reader, and that's vital in order to get the reader to really love your book. So do you have anything that is highlighted in your book? And if you don't, then you need to add some things like that. So what should that highlighted stuff be? It should be the universal truths that other people can relate to, because then the readers connect and they're like, oh, I get it. In Secluded Cabin Sleep Sick, it's a family dinner at Christmas, but the character has a couple of lines that she uses to describe the differences between herself and her brother that become important to the plot in the long run, but really create that relatability with the reader. Once you have a baby, you see it. The world is divided. There were people with kids, and then there were people without kids. Parents remembered what it was like before, but people before parenthood had no idea what it was like afterward. It was an abyss between Hannah and her brother Mako. Would be until he had kids of his own, and maybe even then. That is a universal truth that we can all relate to. We all have been either parents or not parents. That kind of connecting line becomes a highlighted part. In The Frozen Ripper, the main character is a midwife, and she has just delivered a baby with another character. And the woman is really disappointed because she had another daughter and she really wanted a son to make her husband happy. So when the midwife is holding the baby, she looks down at her and says, "Look how pretty you are." I say to the baby, then add, "Look how loved you are." And I pray to God that it is true. And that creates this universality that we can all understand of telling a baby that they are wonderful and pretty, like in The Help with "you is smart, you is kind." Those kinds of lines we all relate to, because we all want to feel loved. We all want our children to feel loved. We all want babies to feel loved. We feel really connected to that. And now you're kind of worried about the baby, right? The baby's not a huge part of the plot, but you're kind of worried about that. Later on, the midwife goes and talks to the husband and says, "You've had another daughter." And she fully expects the husband to be mad. But at the end of the scene, the husband comes in and goes to bed where his wife is. The midwife says, "I listen for the sound of anger, but only hear a man whisper softly to his wife. So what you've also got there is that kind of moment that the guy was kind, he wasn't mean, he wasn't cruel about it. He loved his wife and he said the right things, maybe because of what the midwife said to him, maybe not. But that moment is something that becomes a highlighted moment because it's so universally understood by readers and connects them to these characters. The fifth thing you might be doing wrong is you're telling too much and not showing enough. A lot of writers that I work with have so much backstory in the beginning of their book, and they feel like they really need to tell the reader all this stuff. The reader doesn't want to know. The reader doesn't know your character yet. They want to be hooked. They want to be given a reason to read to the next page. That's really critical. You got to give them a reason to read to the next page. And 7 pages of description about the trees in the backyard are not going to do it. So if you tell too much and you don't show enough, you don't create that emotional connection. I have an entire video on show not tell here that shows you literally exactly how to do it, why you need to do it, and when to use showing as opposed to telling in your book. The showing creates an emotional connection. When you use this really strong language and you paint a vivid picture, the reader connects. And when the reader connects, they care. And that's the 6th key. That's the really important key. The reader has to care. If they don't care, they will not buy the book. All of these things put together create a book that readers care about. There's so many elements to it. It's not just, oh, I created great characters. It is creating a great setting. It is creating some great lines. It is creating those highlighted parts. It's creating the hook. It's creating all these things all together that create a book that readers care about. When I started reading, for instance, The Inmate, I cared about how this character was going to deal with her ex-boyfriend when she met him, because you knew that was inevitable. And once they did connect, and I saw that the ex-boyfriend was kind of not a one-dimensional prisoner, all tatted up, going to beat everybody up kind of person, that he had layers to him and he was complex. I really cared about him too, and I wanted to see how it turned out for him. In The Frozen River, every one of these babies that she delivers has a story behind it, and I care about that, and that connects with me as a reader. All of the characters in The Frozen River also end up connecting together because it's a small town. The setting as well can be very vital to connecting the reader and making the reader care. If you want to read a book that people auto-buy the minute they finish reading the sample, then you've got to get all of these things across in a very quick moment. It's crucial because people have 1,000 things vying for their attention. So getting these things across, creating these hooks, creating a reason to care, creating highlightable lines, all of that gets your book to be something that the reader needs to read. Not just wants to read, but needs to read so that they can see how it turns out because they're caring about these people. They want to make sure that they turn out okay. Don't forget to grab that free download I have on creating compelling characters. If you really want to learn how to do that on micro level, I highly suggest checking out this video here because it talks about exactly how to do that on a line-by-line basis so that you can really break it down within your book. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and like and share because sharing is caring with other writers. And I will see you on the other side of the page.